Okay. So like I said, punctuations are divided into two types, terminal punctuation and pause punctuation. Now, terminal punctuations are usually used to mark an end to the sentence. To mark an end to the sentence. Okay. So what comes under terminal punctuations? You have your period or full stop. Okay. Then we have question mark. Okay. Next, we have exclamatory mark or exclamation. Okay. What else do we have under terminal punctuations? That's it, these three. Okay. And pause punctuations are punctuations used to either join two types of clauses or to show a deliberate pause. Now, when we are trying to show a deliberate pause, this part is not for SAT. Okay, this is only when you're doing spoken English, when you're giving speeches and things of that sort. That's when you use. That's when the uses of that pause punctuation, that is for a deliberate pause, is used. Here for us, the use of a pause punctuation is only going to be the fact that it is used to join two types of clauses. Okay. What are we going to have under this? We are going to have comma, okay, colon, semicolon, okay. Then we are going to have dash, okay. And next, apart from all this, we are going to have the apostrophe, okay. That is also very important. This one also is very important. So comma, semicolon, colon, dash, apostrophe. These come under pause punctuations, out of which these four, okay, are used to join clauses. Okay. This one, apostrophe, is used for contractions. I'll explain it to you when we, go into detail with each of these things. Now, period, question mark, and exclamation, they are hardly tested. These days, question mark is being tested in your SAT, but that's a separate question-based wing altogether. So when you will start working on your exam papers, that's when I will just take a 2 or 3 minute class for this. Okay, this is just for 2 or 3 minutes. It's just one logic. Okay. But remember one thing, period, all of us know where to use a full stop when the sentence comes to an end. When a complete sentence comes to an end, that's when you use a period. Question mark is when you're trying to ask a question. Akshay, what is it? Tell me. You are unmuted. Akshay. And exclamation is used to intensify the emotion in a sentence. Intensify the emotion in a sentence. Please take a screenshot. I'm going to erase all of this. Please take a screenshot. Done? Have you taken a screenshot?
Yes, ma'am.
Now we are going to move on to pause punctuations. None of you got a doubt, ma'am. What are we talking about? Intensifying the emotion in a sentence. What does emotion in a sentence mean? None of you got that doubt? Emotion in a sentence basically means, like, for example, if I have to say she is beautiful, okay, so this is the adjective that I'm using for this noun, okay, which is a feeling, right? So instead of keeping a period, if I put if I put an exclamation, so that means I'm intensifying this emotion called beautiful. So every time the number of punctuation, I mean the number of exclamation you use, that much intensified is the emotion. Got it? Understood? If you have to say I hate you, okay, and you just have to put a period. Instead of putting a period, if you put an exclamation, that means you're intensifying the emotion. Got it? That is also one way of non-verbal communication through writing. Got it? Did you understand my point?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, coming to pause punctuations. In pause punctuations, the most important part is the comma. That is what that covers the major part of punctuations. Okay. So we are going to start off with commas. Okay. So comma has four main uses. Just 1 second, please. Sorry. Yeah. So the comma has four main uses. The first main use of a comma is to separate items in a list. Now, what do I mean by saying to separate items in a list? Now, suppose there is a list of things that is written. For example, my mother asked me to bring 4 items. Okay. And the list is something like this. Say wheat, shampoo, conditioner, and chocolate. Okay. So the logic here is you use a comma to separate each item on the list. Now, in India, we don't have this habit of using a comma before and. Okay, it is treated as wrong. But always remember when in a list, okay, so when in a list there are more than 2 items, there are more than 2 items, then a comma is used before and. Okay, which is correct. Always remember in a list of things, whenever there are a list of things and you use a comma before and, it is correct because SAT is according to American English. Okay, and under the American English standard rules, we use a comma before and. Please remember that. Okay, got it? Now, the exception here is when there are only 2 items in a list. When there are only 2 items in a list, then comma before and is wrong. Okay, like for example, if the same sentence says, my mother asked me to bring 2 items, wheat and shampoo. So if I have to write wheat and shampoo, I will not keep a comma before and. Got it? The reason behind this also is comma plus and in grammatical terms is usually treated as a period. Okay. So when there are 2 items in a list, you cannot keep a period between 2 items, right? That is, period means end of sentence. Now, whereas if you have a list of things, because a comma is used to separate list of things, then this is valid. But list of things, when there are only 2 items, you are not supposed to use a comma before and. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Am I clear? Any doubts? Also remember this logic of comma plus and equals to a period. Anyone, any doubts?
Ma'am, if comma plus and equals to full stop, then how is wheat, a shampoo, conditioner? Then it will
That's
come
what
up
I told you,
at end
because
of
there in that context, comma is being used to separate items in a list. So already there are many existing commas there, right? That is why it is
Yes, ma'am.
validated. Whereas if there are only two things and there is no preceding comma, then a comma plus and will equals to a period and it will not make sense. Got it?
Yes, ma'am. Understood.
Please take a screenshot, whoever wants to take. Done?
Done, ma'am.
That's the first main use of a comma. Okay. Now coming to second use of a comma. To separate author's opinion. Okay. Or words that are not a part of the sentence. So, for example, look at this sentence. She missed her flight. Okay, this is the sentence. Now, this is your main sentence, which is complete. Apart from this, if there is a word that belongs to the category of author's opinion, say suppose Ambika is my friend. Okay, I'm upset that she missed her flight, so I will say unfortunately. Okay, so for me, it's unfortunate that she missed her flight. But on the other hand, Avishi is happy because Ambika is her best friend and Ambika cannot leave her and go if she misses her flight. So, what happens? She will say, fortunately. Okay, so in mathematical terms, if you talk, this is known as the variable part of the sentence, and this is known as the constant part of the sentence. Okay, so this variable part needs to be separated using a comma. Understood? Got it? Which is, it can be changed because author will change and his or her opinion will also change, right? So changes according to situation. Understood? Am I clear? Any doubts? There are 22 people in the class and there are only one or two people responding. So should I assume that only one or two people are present and mark all of the others absent? Or are all the 22 people listening in the class?
Listening.
Listening, ma'am.
Listening, ma'am.
Sure, 100%. None of you are sleeping, na?
No,
No, ma'am.
No, ma'am.
Anybody who's not understanding anything, please ask.
okay, ma'am.
Till here, everybody is clear, understood everything?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am. Understood.
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Now take a screenshot if you want. I'll move on to the third use. Done?
Yes, ma'am. Done.
The third use is to separate linking words. Okay. This is a topic this is something that I'll cover during the transition parts. It's very simple. After a transition, usually a comma is going to come. Okay. But this transition, suppose, like for example, while I was sleeping. Okay. Now, this, I have to keep a comma after this because it's a dependent clause that you will understand in the next use when I talk about joining clauses. why there will be a comma after dependent clause. So a comma after while will be wrong. Understood? So not always after a transition a comma can come. It can come only and only when you're trying to make the transition non-essential. So anything between two commas, anything between two commas can be treated as non-essential. What does non-essential here mean? It simply means that without that part, the sentence still makes sense. The sentence still makes sense. Like, for example, see, she is the writer who is from Punjab. She is the writer from Punjab who won the award. Okay. Now she is the writer who is from Punjab who won the award. Who is from Punjab can be treated as non-essential. So if you remove this part of the sentence, she is the writer who won the award. It's making sense, na? So what does it mean? So non-essential means even if you remove this part of the sentence still makes sense. Got it? So a transition can be used between two commas when you want to show the transition as non-essential, plus after the transition a comma can be used provided it's not ending with a dependent clause. The clause part I'm going to cover in the next topic, in the next use, so it will get clearer with that. Okay, please take a screenshot if you want. One second, sorry.
Done.
Sorry, because of the cough, no, I couldn't control. Sorry. Okay, so the fourth main use, sorry, fourth main use is to separate clauses. Now, out of all the four main uses that you have, sorry, at 1 second. Yes, out of all the four main uses that you have, this is the most important use for your from your SAT per se, not from your general life and all this. Remember, the punctuations that I'm explaining to you today, it is very much useful even in your, it will be useful in your daily life, plus for your IELTS exam, TOEFL exam, whatever exams you write in the future related to English. I mean, even in general, if you have to write an essay, all of these rules apply in that case as well. Okay, so please listen to it carefully. Yeah. Now, to separate clauses from SAT per se, this is the most important use. Now, clauses are of two types: dependent clause and independent clause. Okay, so we will refer to this as DC from now and this one as IC. Now, what is a dependent clause? A dependent clause is a clause that does not make sense by itself. Okay, This is the best way to understand it. Okay. And what is an independent clause? It's a clause that makes sense by itself. Makes sense by itself. Basically, a complete sentence. Just remember it like this: a complete sentence. Is the sentence making sense or no? Like, look at the example for this one. While I was sleeping. While I was sleeping. Does it make sense? Does it make sense? Is the sentence or is the clause making sense if I just write while I was sleeping? Does it make sense?
No, ma'am. It
No,
doesn't make
ma'am.
sense.
That's why it's a dependent clause, because it will need another clause to make sense. Okay, so that is why we call it a dependent clause. What is an independent clause? I was sleeping. It's making sense now? Got it? Understood?
Yes, ma'am.
100%.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Especially the students who are new. Varun, Daksh, you had missed this class. Kirtan, are you all understanding?
Ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
For the others, this is just revision. There are quite a few who missed out in this class. Mr. Dhanush, Siddhant, Khyati, Mahita, are you all understanding, dear?
Yes,
Yes,
ma'am.
ma'am.
Okay, perfect. So
Yes, ma'am.
now always remember, a period can be used directly after an independent clause, but a comma, like a period is compulsory after every independent clause, na? In the same way, a comma is compulsory after every dependent clause. Okay, so the normal structure of a sentence when a dependent clause is involved is DC, comma, IC. So while I was sleeping, comma, my sister was dancing. Understood? So this together makes a sentence. Okay, in which this part is a dependent clause and this part is an independent clause. So what is the first and the foremost rule? A comma after dependent clause is compulsory. Understood? Got my point? For example, look at this.
Yes,
Look at
ma'am.
my example. Because she got wet in the rain. Is it making sense by itself? Is it a dependent clause or an independent clause?
Dependent clause.
Because she got in the rain, so I put a comma and I will put another clause to make sense out of this clause. So because she got wet in the rain, she fell sick. So this part is the independent clause and this part is the dependent clause. Now, DC, comma, IC is the structure. Many people have this doubt, ma'am, can two dependent clauses come together and make one sentence? DC, comma, DC. Is that possible? Is that possible?
No, ma'am.
DC, comma, DC possible?
No, ma'am.
That is not possible. Is wrong. Okay, understood? So DC, comma DC is always wrong. Please remember this. Now, the third thing that you have to remember is, usually, most of the time, 95% of the time, a comma after independent clause is treated as wrong. Okay, a comma after independent clause is treated as wrong, or a comma between two independent clauses is also a mistake, which is an error, and it is called as comma splice. Okay, which is called as a comma splice. But Dhanush being Dhanush, Dhanush says, ma'am, it is my style of writing. I am the author, so I want to use a comma after independent clause. Because you are an English faculty, give me a solution. Right, Dhanush? Right? Okay, so you can use a comma after independent clause in certain situations. So mixed together. Okay, so what are the situations? So in this case, how do you edit a comma splice, and in what cases can you use a comma after independent clause? I'll tell you that. Okay. So I see, comma, fanboys, I see. Okay. For, and, nor, but, or, yet, so. Okay. Any of these words, any of these one words, when you want to use a comma after independent clause, just put one of the fanboys and put another independent clause, and you can use a comma. For example, let me give you an example for this. Example, I like ice creams, but my sister likes coffee. Okay, so what happened here? I have used a comma after independent clause. There's one more independent clause. So I've used one of the fanboys words that is but. Got it? That is the first way of editing a comma splice, and one of the ways where you can use a comma after independent clause. Got it? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
100%. Please ask if you
Yes,
don't
ma'am.
understand anywhere. It is very, very important. Especially this fourth use. It's a little complicated, but you will understand it if you ask your doubts. So ask if you have any doubts. Okay. That is the first way of editing it. Okay. The second way, if you want to use a comma after independent clause, is basically turn. So I see, comma, ing. ing, IC or DC, anything is okay, it doesn't matter. I'll give you an example for this, you will understand. Suppose there are two sentences which says, she is having fun at the party, comma, she is grooving to her favorite music. Okay. Suppose these are the two sentences. Now you can see this is a comma splice. So how will you edit this comma splice? She is having fun at the party, comma, grooving to her favorite music. Understood? Got it? So you can use a comma after independent clause provided the next word after the comma is in the ing form. Understood? Got it? This is nothing but the gerund form or the participle form. Got it? Am I clear?
Yeah.
Did you all understand? Anybody who has not understood? Understood or no?
Understood, ma'am.
Understood, ma'am.
100%?
Understood, ma'am.
Kirtan, Danush,
Yeah.
Khyati, Mahita.
Yes, ma'am.
Understood, ma'am.
Okay.
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
Understood.
now, these are the only two conditions where you can use a comma after independent clause. Okay. Which is also a part of editing the comma splice. Now, only to edit a comma splice, there are, yes, Akshay, tell me.
Ma'am, can you give an example of IC, ing, IC?
Just give me 1 minute. Let me finish this part, then I'll give you one more example. Okay?
Okay, ma'am. Okay, ma'am.
I don't want to confuse the rest of them because that's only you have a doubt. I will give you that example. Okay. Now here, what was I saying? Yeah. So this is one way of these are the two ways of editing. Sorry, of using a comma after independent clause. Okay. Now there are two more ways. In fact, three more ways of editing a comma splice. What are those? But that does not apply for using a comma after independent clause. So what are those ways? Simply put a period. I see period, I see. Okay. The second method is IC semicolon IC. This we will cover when we are doing semicolon. The last method is to convert any one of these independent clauses into a dependent clause and form the structure as DC comma IC. Understood? Now look at the same sentence. She's having fun at the party. She's grooving to her favorite music. Okay. This same sentence, how do I change it to DC comma IC? How can I change it to DC comma IC? Is it possible? Definitely possible. As
Yes, ma'am.
she is grooving to her favorite music, she is having fun at the party. Please note it down properly. There was no space, so I had to scribble it like that. So what did I do? I changed any one of those clauses. She's having fun at the party. She's grooving to her favorite music. So what did I do? I changed the second clause into a dependent clause. What did I do? As she's grooving to her favorite music, she is having fun at the party. So first part, I made it a dependent clause by just adding the word as at the beginning of the clause. You can also say because she's grooving to her favorite music, comma, she's having fun at the party. Understood? Did you understand what I'm trying to say?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
100%? 100%?
Yes.
Any doubts still
Yes,
here?
ma'am.
No doubt.
So let's
No,
just
ma'am.
quickly revise it. Whatever we are talking about in terms of clauses. Clauses are of two types, dependent clause and independent clause. Dependent clause is that clause which cannot make sense by itself. Okay. And what is an independent clause? An independent clause is something that can make sense by itself. So in other terms, you can call it a complete sentence. Okay. Now, a comma after dependent clause is compulsory. So DC comma IC is the usual structure of the sentence if a dependent clause is involved. Okay. DC comma DC is always wrong. Okay. Now, a comma after independent clause is usually treated as wrong. Okay. And a comma between two independent clauses is a major error that people make, which is called as a comma splice. Now, because these two conditions are there, but I want to use a comma after my independent clause. Okay, because that's my style of writing. So for that also in grammar, we have two ways in which you can use a comma after independent clause. That is IC comma fanboys IC. Okay, you cannot have IC comma fanboys DC, which is wrong. Okay, so IC comma fanboys IC, both those clauses have to be independent clauses only. And the second way to use it is IC comma ING or IC. ING is a very rare case. Akshay, coming to you. ING is a very rare case, provided the sentence should look complete. I'll give you an example. I don't have anything at the top of my mind right now, but probably by the end of the class, I will, give you an example. But just remember, IC is a very rare thing. Usually, any clause starting with an ing version becomes automatically dependent. Okay. But again, you have to read the entire clause for for it to make sense. Are you understanding?
Yes, ma'am.
Then there are three other methods to edit a comma splice. That is IC period IC. Simply put a period instead of the comma. The next method is IC semicolon IC, and the last method is change any one of the independent clauses into a dependent clause and convert the structure of the sentence to a DC comma IC. Understood? Got it? Am I clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
100%.
Yes, ma'am.
Any
ma'am.
doubts? Any doubt till here? No doubts. This is what is commas. Okay, that's what commas is all about. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
Now, I'm clearing this up. If you want to take a screenshot, please take a screenshot. Done? Next is very simple. Yeah, next we will move on to what is the next thing that we have after commas? Semicolon. Are you done? Can I erase this?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
Done.
Okay. Now, there are a few more additional uses. Okay. Let's send the PDF across to you. Just read it. If you don't understand, ask. It is very simple. It's all very basic. Okay. Next is semicolon. Okay. Semicolon has only one main use. One main use, that is, it is used to join two closely related independent clauses. Okay, say suppose you are bored of using period again and again and again and again, you can just randomly in between if those two clauses, so they should have the common subject or at least related subject. Okay, like for example, I went to watch a movie with my wife. She thought it was boring. I thought it was amazing. Okay. Now, she thought it was boring. I thought it was amazing. You can use a semicolon here. Why? Because both these clauses, they are talking about opinion. Okay. Now, when it comes to keeping a semicolon between the first sentence and the second sentence, that is, I went to watch a movie with my wife. She thought it was boring. If I want to put a semicolon here and put a period here, I thought it was amazing, that would be wrong because these two sentences are not closely related. These two sentences are closely related. Understood? Got my point? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, ma'am.
One more
Yes,
thing.
ma'am.
Sentence 1, semicolon, sentence 2, semicolon, sentence 3. This is wrong. A semicolon can be used only between two independent clauses. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Clear?
ma'am.
Any doubts? So that is the only and only use of a colon. Okay. Now,
Ma'am, that means from, excuse me, ma'am.
yes, Dhanwant.
Ma'am, that means from a period to period, there should be only one semicolon.
How is that possible? From a period to period, what do you mean? Sentence 1, period, sentence 2, period, sentence 3. From a period to period, there can be one semicolon, you are saying. So if I put a semicolon here or here, that logic doesn't, where, what logic are you saying? From a period to period means? Not necessary,
Ma'am,
no. Now, before sentence 1, there is no period. But if sentence 1 and sentence 2 are related to each other, I can put a semicolon here, na? Understood? Now, after sentence
Yes,
3, there is no period, there is a period. But if sentence 2 and sentence 3 are not related, I cannot use a period here. I cannot use a semicolon here. Got it, Dhanwan? So don't use
Yes,
the
ma'am.
logic of period to period. The logic is if there are two independent clauses which are related to each other or talking about the same context, then you can use a semicolon. Understood? Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Now,
Yes, ma'am.
moving on to colons and dashes. Colons and dashes is one of the most simplest uses, okay? Colon, dash. We don't have hyphen in SAT. Any which ways the use of dash and hyphen is the same, okay? So colon and dash, they have one common use. Actually, this has only one use. This has three uses, okay? But the first and the most important use is common for both these. What is the common use for both these things? The first use is a colon or dash is used after an independent clause and before a list of things. List of things. Now, you will not understand if I say it like that. So the example for this, listen carefully. Remember I gave you the example, my mother asked me to bring 4 items. My mother asked me to bring 4 items. Okay, this is an independent clause, right? So what will I do? I will put a colon or a dash here and I will write the list of 4 items. Okay, understood my point. Now, why am I putting this colon or dash? This is nothing but symbolic representation that a list is going to begin. Now, if the same sentence was written like this, my mother asked me to bring the following 4 items. Will you keep a colon or dash here? Is it correct? Is it correct?
No, ma'am.
Why no, Dhanwant?
Ma'am, because it's already mentioned that following 4 items.
Correct. Following 4 items. So there is already a word representation that a list is going to begin. So you can either have a symbolic representation or you can have a word representation. Plus, because of the presence of the word following, this is no more an independent clause, right? So you cannot have a colon or dash. Understood? Many people, they make this mistake. They write it like this. Suppose, for example, Danny's seafood restaurant specializes in many items such as, and they put a colon or a dash and then they write the list. This is wrong. This gives rise to redundancy because this is symbolic representation and this is word representation. You are simply, doing both the things. You remember the concept of redundancy where, you're repeating things. Remember or no?
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Got it? So this is the logic. Have I made sense or have I not made any sense? Please answer. Have I confused any one of you? If you're confused, please ask.
No, no, ma'am. It's clear.
Only Dhanush is replying. That means only Dhanush Siddhant has understood. What about the others?
Understood.
Understood, ma'am.
Clear, ma'am.
100% everybody. Keertan, are you understanding? Dear? I don't see you replying even once. Keertan,
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am. I get it.
Varun,
Yes, ma'am.
Mahita, darling, are you listening?
Yes, ma'am, I'm listening, ma'am.
Then why no response, darling? Please take a screenshot. Oh, I forgot to tell the other 2 uses of a dash. No, sorry. Like, so this is the first use. Now, the second use of dash is like anything between 2 commas is treated as non-essential. Same way, anything between 2 dashes also can be treated as non-essential. So when you want to show anything as non-essential, you can either use 2 commas or 2 dashes. Okay, remember that. That is, now to choose a comma or to choose a dash, that is purely stylistic. Okay, but you cannot use 1 comma and 1 dash. That is wrong. Either 2 dashes or 2 commas. That is the second use of dash. The third use of dash is basically to show a deliberate pause. To show a deliberate pause. This is for spoken English and it is not tested in your SAT. So this is of no use for us. Got it? Understood? Am
Yes,
I
ma'am.
clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Any doubts? Anything anyone
Doubts, ma'am.
has not understood?